Well, it is lovely to see you all again. And first of all, to all of you who have been campaigning and canvassing, well done on your massive efforts. To those of you who got the MP that you voted for, lucky you. To those of you who got in the MP that you were canvassing for, well done. And to those of you for whom it was not to be this time, we are sorry. We are particularly sorry if any of you have now got a Reform MP representing you. So solidarity, if that applies to any of you. I can see the Parkers from Home Firth. I'd just like to congratulate my dad. I think he's the oldest CLP chair in the country, and they split their seat from Tory to Labour. Well done, Dad. So welcome, everybody. We are really, really delighted to have you all here this evening. I'm going to stop sounding like a local radio DJ and hand you over to Joe in just a moment. We want to talk to you a little bit about the campaign, where we are, where we think we are, obviously the election. We're sure you'll all have views on that, give you a little bit of an update about where we think we go next, and obviously take any questions. So if it's the first time that you've joined us, you are very, very welcome. My name is Laura, and I'm one of the Democracy team. I'm just going to get Alex to say hi.
Hi, everyone. Good to see you all.
That is our Alex, who's our man on the inside, our parliamentary organiser, who has been in Parliament today. So hot off the press, we can give you news about the state of the PLP. And Joe, who obviously you know, who is basically our strategic genius and master organiser. And Caroline, I don't think can join us. As some of you know, Caroline has got 3 school-aged children. So sometimes it's a struggle, but she sends her very best wishes. And yeah, we've got an hour. We know that some of you will be wanting to go and watch the football. So we will finish on time. Do post comments, of course, in the chat. And I'm going to hand over to Joe.
Thank you, Laura, and hello, everyone. So yeah, I'm just going to give a bit of an overview of where we got to in the general election. And before I do, because I know we'll have a few new people, I'm sure, but most of you are not new to the campaign. I'm just going to give a 2-sentence update on what's happened in the last Parliament for anyone who's just joining us, which is in the last Parliament since 2019, electoral reform has gone from being a niche issue in the Labour Party to having the overwhelming support of the membership, the local parties, the trade unions, annual conference, and last year we got official policy from the Labour Party criticising first past the post as driving distrust and alienation of politics. That's a story so far. Getting on to the election. So the election was called on 22nd of May. You'll remember Rishi Sunak standing in the rain in a bafflingly choreographed announcement. Since then, and in fact, I mean, in the run up to that point in time, we'd been out doing Labour for PR canvassing for some of the most pro PR, then prospective parliamentary candidates. We basically stepped that up through the election campaign. Alex, how many people did we, or rather, do you want to name some of the people we campaigned for?
Yeah, so I think we did it for about half a dozen candidates in all, from like everywhere, from Stroud to Milton Keynes to Bournemouth and even Glasgow Southwest. I think we ran a phone bank for. So we've had like a complete 100% success rate with all of them getting elected, which is brilliant because we've got some really strong supporters of PR there in Parliament now.
Yeah, and it was really great to see people getting involved in that, and yeah, just really, really important for sort of building up that caucus of pro-PR MPs. As the campaign went on, we had the manifesto announcement. First of all, of course, we had the Clause 5 meeting, which was very tightly guarded, and we'll know a thing or two about that. But after the manifesto essentially was sort of rubber stamped by that meeting of the most senior stakeholders in the party, we had the announcement. And I mean, we've known for a long time that this is going to be a really tight, streamlined manifesto. We're aiming for some of the language that we'd seen in the past being used by the party to get in there. In the event, what we had was statements about trust in politics being shattered, about there being a crisis of confidence in our political system to deliver change, and slightly ambiguously and quite impressively, that we need to deepen our democracy by reforming Parliament. Now, I mean, in some terms, that could be interpreted to give you a mandate for a very great deal. So I think we do come out of the manifesto with sort of some directions to move in. We obviously didn't get a strong commitment to electoral reform, but I think we've sort of realized for some time that it's going to be a really tight manifesto, and it's very positive to get the sort of broad criticism of trust in politics that we'd seen Starmer talking about. Now, slightly later in the campaign, we had something that was slightly more disappointing, and we were in touch with all of our supporters and all of our WhatsApp groups and so on when this happened with our response to it, which was that during a quickfire Q&A session with ITV Politics, Keir Starmer seemed to come to the defence of first past the post. He said it was a right system that's given a strong government. This was very disappointing. We put out a statement in response to this, and basically sort of felt that this has to be challenged. And the line we took basically was that, given our own position, given Labour's criticism of Tory chaos over recent years, given the talk about distrust in politics being driven by first past the post that's in the MPF, it just doesn't land that we have we're now coming to the defence of first past the post. Encouragingly, this hasn't been repeated since then, either before or after the election. So we're hoping it's sort of a return to the not a priority line which was being used before then. During the campaign itself, I mean, Labour's campaign was highly targeted, just really, incredibly focused, leading to an incredibly efficient distribution of the vote. But some of the consequences of that, obviously that is a consequence itself with first past the post, but some of the consequences of that were really quite stark. We saw local parties in many parts of the country being basically not only not encouraged to campaign, which is normal, but being actively prevented from campaigning in their local areas, which is new and really quite worrying, I think. Particularly as we got towards polling day itself, activists in many areas of the country actually had their access to contact creator cut off. Were told that if they're going to campaign, they have to do it in these key target seats. There was quite a bit of pushback that we picked up, just anecdotally, but a significant amount about that. And I think that just underlines the sort of some of the wider corrosive effects that first past the post has, and the kind of strategies you have to employ to win under first past the post have on our politics. And then we got to polling day and election night, and we actually have a video to share with you, which goes into some of the discussion and the coverage that was on during polling night. If I can just get my screen share to work. Hopefully you can all see that. It's about 5 minutes long, but we'll just play it through, and there we go.
326 seats I needed to win. So, here we go.
And as Big Ben strikes 10, the exit poll is predicting a Labour landslide.
Sir Keir Starmer will become Prime Minister with a majority of around 170 seats.
The exit poll predicts that Labour will have captured 410 seats, adding 209. It suggests the Conservatives will have lost.
To look at one thing as this develops, which we can't see yet, which is what is the percentage of the vote that these different people got.
We will get that later in the night.
And the reason that's important, though, is that what will matter is that Labour may well have got a staggering majority with quite a low percentage of the vote. And you may end up with a lot of tension. The Reform Party might have ended up with quite a high percentage of the vote, low number of seats. Lib Dems might have got lower percentage, fewer votes, and 5 times the number of seats. So a lot of questions about our electoral system, but bigger than that.
Our system is a first past the post, and it's the number of MPs that are sitting on those government green benches. You don't need to worry about the percentage of the vote. What you need to worry is delivering.
David has a point about proportional representation, because I think we may well be discussing this quite a lot coming out of this campaign. I remember in 2015 in Lee feeling the vote for UKIP and knowing it was getting quite big. And what was it, 4 million or so votes? And they got one seat. And I remember, you know, you've got to not look at this tribally first and foremost. You've just got to think, is that healthy in a democracy? Because I think some of the frustration people felt in 2015 was then expressed in 2016 at the referendum. And I think that was something that, you know, I really kind of felt in my constituency. But I do think now, coming out of this election, when we look at the share of the vote, and I don't know what share Reform are going to get, but I think finally, I mean, because obviously you've got Conservative voters now leaning to a party. The Conservatives have always been the blockers on proportional representation. I think the kind of opinion is changing. Labour at the grassroots has changed on this issue. I think proportional representation could become quite a big deal in this Parliament.
Hold on a second. Just want to say that the discussion will be about is PR, proportional representation. I think there'll be lots of people talking about PR. I think if you look at...
But you're not talking about that.
Well, I think the people, public, will be talking about proportional representation and whether we need to have a debate about it. And I've always said that we do need to have a debate about it around the country, because I think we're going to need to look at the share of the Green vote, the share of the Lib Dem vote, the share of the Labour vote, and then we need to do the number crunching when we see that.
Just one quick do you think that's going to come then, a conversation about the voting system after this election?
Oh, I think so. I think I mean, there's already. But if you think about it, there's already a debate around PR, and I think that there's always has been a debate around PR, but I think even stronger now there will be a debate around PR after this.
But not at the high echelons of the Labour Party. One suspects if on the first past the post you're getting a majority of 170.
Oh yeah, I mean we wouldn't argue with the results. I mean, this is delivered for us. But actually, at Labour Party conference, we did pass a motion on PR.
In 1924, Labour were committed to proportional representation, as they had been since Keir Hardie founded the party in 1900. Now we've got. Anne's gone, but there were 6 of us representing different parties. We've got 6 parties in a 2-party system. And proportional representation has to come back onto the agenda, because part of the problem, you're talking about turnout, what's the point of turning out when you know you're in a seat where, in general, there's been a few exceptions tonight, there's massive majorities, and not everybody's vote counts. So we're talking about now, I see Jeremy Corbyn was banging on about he got a higher turnout, or almost as high a turnout when he was leader. But political parties don't go out for turnout. They go out to the seats they think they're going to win and try to win those. And the seats that are safe, like my old seat, they don't get any attention whatsoever. So if you want a system where turnout matters and where the proportion of people voting matters, change the system. Because that ain't first past the post.
The fight for trust is the battle that defines our age. Country first, party second. This lack of trust can only be healed by actions, not words. Country first, party second. Self-interest is yesterday's politics. I want a politics and a country that works for you.
So that's just some of the contributions we saw on election night, and lots of those happened on their own. Some of them, I mean, we've been working, you know, to make sure people are ready to draw attention to the vote share and the difference that has between votes and seats. We've been very conscious that since the 2019 general election, in 2019 there was virtually no discussion about the difference and this discrepancy between votes and seats on election night until about 6 in the morning, and it's been quite a sort of controversial outcome. So I think particularly we've been keen to talk to Labour spokespeople and make sure that that is really recognised this time. Obviously the result did a lot of that work for us, but really good to line people up properly. I'm just going to run you quickly through some of the results of the election in terms of disproportionality. I'm sure you've seen lots on this, so I'll just be very quick. But essentially, this is what the overall result looks like. This is a record landslide, or it's the biggest. It's the first time a majority has been achieved on this smaller share of the vote. We got under 34%, about a third of the vote, and we got 63% of the seats. I mean, that compares to the until now the most disproportionate election, which was 2015, when the Tories got barely a majority, and they did so on 36 and a bit % of the vote. You'll see the Tories this time are real victims of the system, or to some extent. They got 24% of the vote, and they got a slightly smaller number of seats. Lib Dems, everyone is saying, ironically, got the closest to their proportional share of the votes, but the real other shock is the Reform and Green vote and how that translates to seats. I mean, you got pretty much, well, more than 1 in 5 people who voted for one of those two parties, and yet they got 9 seats shared between them. Real sort of compression of their representation. This is from the Electoral Reform Society, but it's the number of votes it took for each party to elect a single MP. Reform UK, it took 1 million. The Green Party, it took 500,000. Labour, it took 23,600. This is also from the Electoral Reform Society. It breaks it down by party, but overall, only 58, or rather 58% of people who voted did not get the local MP who they voted for. So the vast majority of people got neither their local MP nor the party they voted for in government. This is interesting to look at. This is since 1925, the combined Labour and Conservative vote share. Now, admittedly, the big fall at the end there is mainly due to the Conservatives, but this is really a two-party system that is no longer a two-party system. This is the lowest it's been since, over 100 years. And similarly on turnout, it was just slightly above where it was in 2001, but otherwise we're sort of back to a steady decline in turnout over the last 100 years, slightly punctuated by the Brexit years. So, yeah, a highly disproportionate election is the most disproportionate election that we've had in British history. It's a fantastic landslide for Labour, and it gives us a chance to do everything we need to do to turn the country around. But it doesn't reflect how people voted. And I'm going to hand over to Laura to talk a little bit about the sort of political implications of this.
Hi, first of all, thanks to Joe for getting that video together. And I've seen people have asked for it, and we are definitely going to release it. I think we also wanted to say thanks to all of you. We have definitely helped shape the reporting around this election, because every single broadsheet and all of the major broadcasters on the evening were talking about this, but they were including in their commentary talking about the Labour Party, and the fact that the Labour Party membership has shifted and the trade unions have shifted has been a really significant part of their commentary, because they know that that's something that we can peg this campaign around within the sort of core body of the party itself. So massive thanks to all of you. Like, I know it feels like forever ago that you got those CLP motions passed, and then we tortured you to input on the National Policy Forum. And I can see Aileen there, one of our trade union activists. It feels like a long time since you've been fighting your way through the trade unions to get motions passed there. But all of that has really made a massive difference. It is such a strong foundation for this campaign. So big thank you to all of you for that. We haven't even captured everything, by the way. There was commentary throughout the evening. Many of you will have also seen in the days just before the election, there was an article from Polly Toynbee in The Guardian, and there's one from Zoe Williams today. I also highly recommend, if you've not had the chance to read the piece that Joe and Sandy from the Labour Campaign for Electoral Reform, who is here this evening, they had in Labour list. And some of the key arguments now coming out, and we can obviously all discuss this, are about this sort of mile wide, inch thin Labour majority. And of course, in parliamentary terms, it's amazing. 412 MPs, it's an ability to get a huge amount done. But if you look behind those numbers, Labour has brought together quite a vulnerable coalition of people. In 103 Labour seats, there are Reform candidates are second. In 39, I think, or 40 seats, Green candidates are second. That is quite a coalition of sort of underpinning voters to try to keep together. It's not obvious now, as the party thinks, as it will be thinking already about where it goes at the next election, which way it's going to lean. And this is illustrating the fragility of the system, because of course in a proportional system it would be blindingly obvious. The progressive side of the motorway, and we will all define it in slightly different ways, but broadly speaking, everything that's not conservative or reform, that progressive side of the house would clearly be working together as they do across the whole of Europe, and this would be a lot less fragile. So it's broad but very shallow, and that has been picked up a lot in the commentary in the media since. We are absolutely certain, if Anne has any insights, we will welcome them, but we are certain the leadership has noticed all of this. It will not, you know, that they can't have failed to spot Nigel Farage when Parliament opened yesterday. They will know that he is championing PR. None of us believe he's a Democrat. Most of us don't believe he's actually interested in democratic reform, but he has got a point when he says that millions of people had a vote that didn't count. And the Labour Party will now understand that if it doesn't want those millions of people to get more angry and even more likely to vote, and in greater number, for the Reform Party, then it could do something about it. By taking on the mantle of democratic reform, the Labour Party could pull that rug from under Farage's feet. And that is, of course, what we would like it to do in coming weeks and months. Now, how are we going to get there? Key to all of this, you'll remember we've discussed over the last 2-3 years, our strategy was build the base, the CLPs, get the strength of the membership, bring in the trade unions, work our way through conference, get whatever we could by way of policy. And now the next frontier is obviously the parliamentary Labour Party. And at this point, I'm going to hand over to Alex, who has hot-footed it over from Portcullis House today.
Thanks, Laura. So I think, as everyone here knows, there's been such a huge shift in the grassroots of Labour and across the movement, and that has translated into the new PLP. There is a generation of new MPs now that are really supportive of PR. In fact, it is the most pro-PR PLP we've ever had. We've got over half of the new Parliamentary Labour Party supportive of electoral reform. Obviously, the mood music at the moment is very triumphant. We're really happy to have a majority and have the Tories out, but that means that we are closer than ever to having a really strong movement from within Parliament for proportional representation. And within that, there are Labour MPs from every nation and region of Great Britain. So we've got supporters who have got experience of PR working across Wales, Scotland, London. And yeah, I've been in Parliament today meeting with some of our stalwarts and discussing what the next steps look like in the run up to conference season. The other thing that's happening as people are getting their feet under the table and getting their offices set up and everything is that you'll have seen their ministerial appointments coming out. We don't yet know who the new Minister for Democracy is going to be. It hasn't been announced. And there's a kind of role which some of you may have noticed on the shadow cabinet around the constitution that's currently held by Nick Thomas Simmons. So we're keeping an eye on who the kind of key figures are going to be. We also know in terms of those appointments so far that our support for proportional representation and for electoral reform more widely is really evenly spread. So it's not a case of it only being among backbenchers. It's spread right throughout the kind of up and down the party hierarchy. So that puts us in a really good position in terms of talking to the front bench as well. Have I missed anything, Laura? Is there anything that we should add there? I don't think so. Over to Joe then.
Maybe that we'll have an all-party parliamentary group.
Yes, that's the other thing that we're sort of, yeah, we are organising with some others, obviously, and we're holding the Labour-facing part of that so that we've got a vehicle for convening space within Parliament and starting to kind of push constructively for cross-party consensus on a route forward. But yeah, we're still kind of nailing down names on that. We have several committed already, but yeah, more to share soon.
I think the other bit of the parliamentary strategy, people have asked us, and in fact, we discussed it this morning at a meeting, including with Sandy, who may want to come in. People have asked us about bills and promoting bills, and don't we want to have a sort of something early on so we can out the supporters in the Parliamentary Labour Party? And we are resisting that for the moment. Sandy, I don't know if you want to come in on that point.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, in my experience, and not very long experience, but enough to have some idea that backbench bills basically don't get things done unless they are something non-controversial that the government is prepared to accept. This is the sort of issue which is far too big for a backbench bill to actually affect any change. It can and might be in some stage in the future a useful lobbying tool, but it wouldn't be the way that we would actually change the electoral system. We need to look at the tools that we use, and we need to use them at the right time. And at the moment, we have a situation where we are asking the party to do what we believe that it has said it will do through the party programme and through some of the statements made by Keir and others. And it seems distrustful and unhelpful to prejudge whether or not they will do anything by stomping in now and trying to do other things at the same time. Not only that, but also, of course, with the new government and new level of euphoria coming into Parliament and the very heavy programme that is going to be enacted this year, it would be a waste of our time and effort and a waste of our political capital to try and do something that we couldn't do now. Much better to wait until after the conference this year and then reassess what we can best do in order to raise the issue up the agenda.
Yeah, thanks, Sandy. And that's particularly important. We're all going to have to readjust after the chaos of the last few years and the never-ending Prime Minister sort of swap around. We're going to have to readjust to a world in which now, absent some utter disaster, we could be in government for 4 to 5 years. And so all of our sort of timelines have to adjust accordingly. Just to answer one of the questions, I think it's from Guy Major in the chat. We think it's at least half the PLP are pro-PR. The reason why there is a we think in that sentence is that a number were selected and elected in great haste, and we have yet to hear from them. And we also have a number of undeclareds. Now, we know that some people weren't going to declare their hand on anything on the other side of the election, and they might still take a little bit of time to coax them out. So we're still sort of treading slightly delicately. But yeah, it's at least half, and that's assuming that the bits that we don't know about are sort of proportionately parcelled out. I mean, First Past the Post has got very, very little positive support as well. There are a group of MPs who are in the antechamber of PR who have come out to us as being against First Past the Post, but haven't yet come out pro-PR. The number who are pro First Past the Post is really quite slim. Joe,
yeah, it's worth mentioning actually that the First Past the Post supporters as a proportion have shrunk drastically because they were kind of from the 1997 cohort, let's say, and yeah, a lot of them have either moved on to Lords or retired. So in terms of the mood of the party, this is the direction of travel. It's just a matter of increasingly, I think, when, but we can't be complacent that we may only have 5 years if first past the post swings against Labour in the same way it has against the Tories in their 2019 majority. So we can't afford to kick this down the road. It is urgent. And we're going to be making that case as well, that everything that Labour achieves over the next 5 years could be completely hostage to this completely bonkers system that we've got. So yeah.
Yeah, just to pick up on another question which I've seen in the thread, Polly Toynbee article, as someone has noted, suggested that there should be a royal commission. Now we're currently doing a piece of work, Land and the wider members of our coalition, looking at the pros and cons of such a system. We definitely are calling for there to be a review. We think if the leadership of the party can come out and say that the NHS is bust, it's not asking them too much to just come out and fess up that the electoral system is bust, but we are just taking our time to think about what the best option would be. What we don't want to do is sort of set off very specifically behind one mechanism and discover that if that is undermined, we've sort of talked ourselves into a corner. Obviously, a royal commission has a big advantage in that it could be kind of quite focused. Keir likes the flag, so the royal bit would also probably be popular. But we're still working through those details at the moment. And someone has said, do we need a briefing doc, which, as well as identifying problems and solutions, looks at proposed routes? Yes, and absolutely. And if you have already written stuff, or you've got blogs, or you've got ideas or comments that you want to make, please send them to us, because this is the point at which we are sort of gathering that. And we, as you know, have been really keen not to bog our campaign down to date in process and systems, because we knew that that was not a way to build a broad coalition. We are now moving to that point in the campaign when process and systems discussion is going to become slightly more inevitable. So those of you with expertise, please do let us know and send stuff you've read that you think is good, things that you've written. It's all really, really welcome.